tell he's a very serious looking mean here. And he was quite accomplished as a portraitist. He did many portraits later of different individuals, and that was one of his self-portraits, of which he did many. Nick, I'm not advancing here. Alfredo Ramos Martinez went to the Academy of Fine Arts as a teenager when he was studying to be an artist, which he had developed skills very early in life. And he was discovered by Phoebe Hearst at a state dinner when he had done decorations for various things, including the placemats. Phoebe Hearst, the mother of William Randolph Hearst, decided to sponsor him and encouraged his further art education in France. So in 1899, he traveled to France as a sponsor of Phoebe Hearst. So there he roomed with a Nicaraguan poet in Paris, where he was introduced to Claude Monet and another Spanish speaker, a young man named Pablo Picasso. And from there, they met all of the cafe society of artists, writers, musicians, dancers, and many other of the quite lively group of artists and cultural figures of Paris in the turn of the century. But Ramos Martinez decided to try all types of art techniques, including this work here of a landscape with young women in the foreground in the impressionistic style. Ramos Martinez had always believed in painting in the aire libre, or as they say in France, the plein air type of art. That is, painting in the open outdoors method. That is, going to the outdoors, painting, whether it's landscapes, people, structures, seascapes, landscapes, whatever. Not the old academic style of painting an object in an enclosed room or painting things that were of long ago and far away. So that is the type of art that Ramos Martinez adopted for himself as a model. You can see from this painting that it's quite different from the works we have here at the Coronado Library, and one that he became more famous for executing. Here is another work from Alfredo Ramos Martinez. In 1906, he exhibited this work and won a gold prize at the Salon d'Automne, or the Autumn Salon, which was a salon for impressionists and those that were not of the academic school. Those were all of the famous impressionists exhibited here, including Cézanne, who was very influential, and all subsequent artists in France and the world. But here, Alfredo Ramos Martinez won a gold prize. This painting is very different than, of course, what we have here. But again, you can see the women in a procession with very articulated posture, again, carrying flowers. The faces are very detailed, very beautiful women. The fashions are very of an earlier time, but very detailed, very beautiful, including the shoes. And the scenery is lovely also. It's a beautiful work, very worthy of a gold prize, from which he was very proud, but one that he would subsequently not continue that style after he returned to Mexico. Here is his classic style that we know today. And it's a different type of posture, and just to show that it's not one that he could not do in a different and more detailed and more beautiful style, according to some tastes, but just to show how appreciated his style is today. This painting sold for $4 million in 2007. At that time, the second highest Latin American work of art, just after Frida Kahlo's work. And this is a oil painting as an easel work. This piece is again by Alfredo Ramos Martinez, beautiful also, but it's painted on newsprint. This on the Los Angeles Times from 1936. When he was still in France, he traveled to the northern part of France. He traveled to Holland. He studied Rembrandt. He studied the works of Van Gogh. But along the way in Brittany, he ran out of paper and canvas, and he took the quickest thing he could find, which was newsprint. So he painted on newsprint. And he found that he liked it. He liked the columns. He liked the structural aspect of that background, which he accentuated by darkening the column borders and adding diagonals, which you can see in all of his many works that he did on newsprint much later in life, when he didn't need to use newsprint. He could afford all types of fine papers and canvas, etc. But he liked that background. And in fact, the columns and diagonals there, he would use on even the murals that we'll get to. But back to La Avenida, this is what it looked like after it had closed. This is about 1992. So no furniture, no tables, no nothing, a closed facility. And there's a whole backstory to everything that happened, to owners who wanted to build a huge hotel on the site, a lot of backlash in the community. Subsequent owners, finally the Thieberges that had a note on the building foreclosed. They owned it. They wanted to build a smaller hotel, but still the city said no. So they developed what you have now on the site of the old La Avenida. But they were influenced to not tear down the whole facility without preserving the murals. So through an art consultant, they found Nathan Zackheim, who found a way to remove the murals from the site. And that's what's going to happen. But first, I'd like to point out these two figures here. In an earlier remodel of the Lavanita, they were taking up some old carpeting. One of the workers used gasoline to loosen the glue, and somebody was smoking a cigarette that dropped onto the gasoline, which caused a fire, which was mostly smoke, but the smoke damage did this darkening to the faces of the women. It caused other damage, which somebody who owned the restaurant at the time tried to clean up by all kinds of abrasive technique and did further damage in terms of effacing some of the paint colors, et cetera, et cetera. So there was all kinds of issues with the fresco. Smoke damage, years of soot and grime, and effacing of some of the color, etc. So Nathan Zackheim and his crew decided the best way to remove the mural was to separate it into 5 pieces by cutting it into 5 panels. The above the doorway sections would be 3 smaller ones and the 2 major panels. The table that you see there, wooden table, is actually going to be part of one of the crates. This is the back side of one of the main panels, and it's going to be part of the crate as well. So the fresco was painted on plaster. It's a fresco mural painted on plaster. The plaster was attached to button board. Button board was an alternate technique to lath and plaster, but the button board was basically attached to 2x4 wooden 2x4s. The wood was not considered the final method to keep the mural safe. So the 2x4s were attached with nails. The nails were sawed off, and steel framing in the same configuration was substituted. Before this was put in its place, the framing there that was part of the backing. So that proceeded, but also in the Lavanita was the Canasta de Flores, which is the floral mural that is now at the library, covered in wallpaper, 2 layers of wallpaper, which had been done in an earlier remodel. This was discovered at the last minute as it was about to be torn down. So this could easily have been lost altogether. In fact, this is what it looked like in a close-up. You can see down at the edges here, if you can see that from your seats, there are already holes here and up at the top where a hammer was starting to go to work on it. Not a pretty sight. And here is the flatbed truck taking away one of the crates that has one of the panels. That includes a lot of padding and a lot of protection, and it's going away to be stored. At about this time, the mural, all of it, was offered to me here at the library for us to put up. Back then, in 92, all of the architecture of the library was like this windroom, columns and glass walls. So we had no place to put up a 48-foot long mural. So I had to decline the offer, as sad as that was. So the mural was donated instead to the city of Coronado, and it was put in storage. And off it goes here to a storage site. The floral mural, the Canasta de Flores, was going to be put up for sale. The black and white photo that we saw of the 18-foot mural went up for sale, and as I mentioned, was bought by a Hollywood producer. Subsequently, as we planned the remodel and expansion of the library, I had met with the architects when all of that was approved for us to go. I met with the architects and said, this mural is in storage, the El Dia del Mercado, and we have to find room for it, a prominent location for it, which is where it is now, facing the public as soon as they walk in, visible at night through a glass curtain wall where you can see it even when you drive down Orange Avenue, illuminated at night. Even when the library is closed, you can walk up to the curtain wall and see it. And that's what happened through the architectural planning of the building from the outset. Here it is in Los Angeles at the Playa Vista location, which was the old Howard Hughes aircraft Hughes tool manufacturing site being restored. All 5 panels are being joined here, where for a year it's going through the restoration process, which included using fine dental picks that at one time dentists used to clean your teeth. They were being used to pick out dirt and grime and grease from the individual pores of the plaster. We had organized a bus trip to go up there and view the work being done. Here are some Coronado residents. Admiral Jack Shaw's there close to the middle of the photograph looking at the mural. He was on library board president at the time. Jim Peltier's in the middle. Dr. Sanger is about in the middle. We just see the back of his head. Nathan Zackheim is there in the photo. Ellen Joy Weber, the far left, taking a photo. She was the head children's librarian at the time. And we can see they're putting the 5 sections, just starting to work on the restoration. That's Nathan Zackheim, who was in charge of the restoration process. And also he took all of the sections of the mural out of La Avenida. Here they are, all 5 sections in place. You can see all the paints and paraphernalia ready to be worked on the mural. Meanwhile, the Canasta de Flores got restored and it was up for sale. I found out about it through an art consultant that it was for sale at the Design Center in Beverly Hills, amidst furniture and other objects, where anybody, and that included all types of people with a lot of money in Beverly Hills could buy it, put it in their living room, put it in their dining room, put it in wherever, for the price of $150,000, which wasn't that much money for the people in Beverly Hills. And that would have been a great loss to Coronado, I thought. So we didn't have that much money in the, we didn't have 150,000 in the budget for the library expansion. We were using every penny for the basic construction and remodel and all of the add-ons we were planning in the project. So I went to the library board of trustees, and because of the dynamics of the project at the La Avenida, the owners, the Thieberges, did not get along with the city. By extension, they didn't want to get along with the library board of trustees either. So I went to the Friends of the Library as a nonprofit organization. They were not really close enough to the city to qualify in the hatred category of the Thieberges. So we started negotiations from there to try to acquire this. And fortunately, the Friends of the Library had just gotten a large bequest. So that was a possibility. So negotiations started to acquire this piece from the Thieberges, and dropping the price down to 125,000. We started working to try to make that happen. So here we go. In this photograph, we have in white here Patty Mollenauer, the late Patty Mollenauer, who was friends of the president of the Friends of the Library. Next to her in dark is the back of Fran Monroe, who was on the library board of trustees. Fran is in the audience. Fran, where are you? Okay, stand up, Fran. Take a bow. She was very active in making sure that we got this first on the library board, and then, you know, trying to help convince the Friends of the Library to get this piece. And a couple of strong bodies are there. They're going to lift this onto a pallet jack and put it in a truck to truck it down here. At the time, the library was still under construction. We were across the street in the old police facility, and we got that and put it in one of the old jail cells to make sure it was going to stay safe. I'm in the background at, excuse me. I'm in the background right here. I still had hair at the beginning of this process. But that's what it looked like, fully restored, and that's what you can see in the library. And Nathan Zeckheim did the restoration on that. Now here's the full parts of the crates of the El Dia del Mercado coming back to Coronado. The project wasn't finished here, but this had to be installed before we were finished with the remodel of the library. And here it's being lifted off of the flatbed. You can see the process, the construction site. The foreground there is still dirt. You can see part of the Spreckles building there, part of the expansion. Susan Keith was on the library board. That's her wearing a hard hat. And the telescopic forklift is taking the main crate off the truck. And here it is. Despite having a brand new entrance into the building, the big crate has to go through the old small door of the building, because that's the only opening where this big crate can fit through. And there it goes, being squeezed in. And the same techniques the old Egyptians used to slide in huge sculptures and so forth. Small rollers, wooden rollers in the bottom of the crate is how this piece was moved from this doorway into the lobby. And you can see the Speckles building there. All the old stucco was removed. It's down to the bare concrete. And it was concrete. John D. Speckles, when he had this built in 1908, 1909, had just survived the San Francisco earthquake in 1906. So he insisted that this building be made out of steel reinforced concrete. The first such building in San Diego County, and the first such library in California. Here in the lobby, this was a specially engineered and designed frame for the mural. It's not yet placed on the steel columns that are going to be bolted onto concrete pads that go deep into the ground to make sure the mural is going to survive any earthquake that hits it. When the mural goes into the steel frame, there's plenty of Europreme rubber that is behind it and all the way around it. It's still painted, it's rust color, but as we'll see in the next slide, it's painted white, so you can barely see it, but that's the steel frame in place. Here are the panels on their crate, on their resting places before the mural gets put in place. And that's the part of the mural exposed by Nathan Zackheim. You can see part of the padding where it just exposes some of the scene. Now, that's still 5 sections of mural. The 3 above doorway pieces and the 2 main panels. Since there are 5 pieces, they have to be joined together. So Brad Wright here, and he's a painter and worked on the restoration, but he happened to be the grandson of one of the managers of the Hotel del Coronado back at the turn of the 1900s. But anyway, he's working on putting plaster and infilling with paint the cracks of the joints of the 5 sections of the mural. And that's what it looked like when it's all together, including the checkout counter and reception desk at the time of its final installation. This was back in early 2005. And this is what it looks like in a digital photograph, part of the main panel. These were the two faces that had been blackened, fully restored. And this digital photograph reveals several things about the artist, which I'll get back to in terms of Ramos Martinez. This in contrast to La Primavera that he won the gold prize for. So we can tell that he knew how to paint in different styles. That early Impressionist piece with the ladies in the foreground and the very impressionistic style of the entire painting. The La Primavera piece, where we know he could use very accurate posture and delicate faces and elegant wardrobes for the ladies and delicate feet. But here we go to the style that he wanted to get to when he came back to Mexico. And we can see this procession of women carrying baskets of fruit, baskets of flowers, going to market against a wall. We can see in the wall the cross-hatched markings reminiscent of his work on newsprint, a style he liked. We can see with the sky this blue pattern, not a solid blue, which would actually take away from the heads of the women and maybe even be garish, or not a cloudy blue that would also take away from the faces of the women, but in a blue made with individual brush marks, which made it a more delicate blue sky. And with the postures of the women, it almost makes the painting look like a hieroglyphic. Very simple shapes, which almost lull you when you look at it carefully and pay attention to it. An easy procession of women doing a very basic and traditional part of lifestyle then, now, and even in the Egyptian days. So the posture of the women, they're almost like Lego figures in their simplicity, which is the point he's trying to get across about the native women of Oaxaca, not his native area, but his wife's native area, which gets to his wife. He married late in life. His daughter was born with a congenital disease. So as he came back to Mexico after 10 years in France, he got a position first as assistant director of the Academy of Fine Arts in Mexico, and then the director. And as the director, he started schools of open air, aire libre schools, where young students could come and learn art in the open air method of art instruction. And that included two famous Mexican muralists, Rufino Tamayo and David Siqueiros, that learned art in that method. But he had to, because of his daughter's health, he had to come to the United States to the Mayo Clinic at first in Minnesota, and then he moved to Los Angeles for further treatments for his daughter's health. So he had to start his career all over again in Los Angeles. There he was taking work on commission. He was adopted in the Hollywood community, where stars such as Jimmy Stewart and Gary Cooper Directors like Alfred Hitchcock and several screenwriters, the costume designer Edith Head, all bought his easel paintings. And he did murals in several locations, unfortunately in buildings that subsequently got torn down. So we're fortunate to have this work, very fortunate. They're really masterpieces. And you know, the rarity of the murals are really outstanding. He did these late in his life. He was working on a much bigger complex of murals at the Margaret Fowler Gardens at the Scripps College in Pomona in 1946, where just shy of his 75th birthday, he died. Those were outdoors, so over the years they did suffer quite a bit of damage, but they've recently been restored. He did a section above the doorway at the St. Mary's Church in La Jolla, but those suffered because they were outdoors facing the ocean, and they were substituted by tiles. But very little of his mural work survives, so we're very fortunate to have these pieces here. And as I mentioned, one of his last paintings sold for $4 million. The mural we had here was appraised at $1 million, but that was, you know, a long time ago at installation. Who knows what it would be worth today? And it's not like you can take it off the wall and take it home and put it up. So murals are appraised differently. But contrary, again, to what the stories are, you know, his standing in art is really of the highest order, and we should all appreciate. And when we come into the library, take a second look and look at the mural. I'll be giving a tour for anybody who's interested after. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to entertain those.
Okay, let's take a 7-minute coffee break and return for the question and answer period to be followed by the tour. Thank you very much.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Ooh.
Yes. Very different.
Yeah. Here we go. This is a hero shot.
Hmm? Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah,